This is the cutest tiger cub in the world. These chubby little balls of fluff will grow up in just a few years to become majestic rulers of the jungle. Adventure is the instinct of every tiger cub. Even though their legs are still clumsy, these cubs, not even 2 weeks old, are already toddling around exploring the world around them. But raising 4 little ones at the same time is truly overwhelming, especially since she is still such a young mother. Mother tiger Amba is only 3 years old. She is a solitary hunter in the green forest and also the star of this territory. Whenever she appears, all eyes turn toward her. But even at the top of the food chain, Amba's hunting success rate is only about 30%. She has been away from the den hunting for quite some time, and the 4 cubs at home are already starving. When they catch a familiar scent, their tiny ears perk up instantly, and they wobble toward the source of the smell. But the open area is not suitable for hiding cubs, so she leads them to a dry riverbed. The little ones are extremely hungry, and as soon as Amba lies down, they scramble onto their mother and nurse eagerly. A life that is both warm and tense like this will continue for another 4 months. As the milk in her body is constantly drained, Amba's hunger grows stronger and stronger. The amount of food she needs has doubled. Only by hunting continuously can she ensure enough milk for her cubs. After feeding them, Amba turns and heads deeper into the forest, but she has no idea that the cubs left behind were about to face a deadly threat. After eating their fill, the cubs were bursting with energy again, curious about everything around them. They began exploring everywhere. Ivy likes climbing the vines beside the rocky wall, but after struggling for a while, she still cannot make it up. The boldest is Ravi, a little adventurer at heart. Even though he stumbles as he walks, he refuses to stop. The smallest is Cham, rather quiet, curling up in a corner, his round eyes watching his siblings play. As for Gru, he is energetic by nature, climbing up the riverbank slope quickly, but also sliding down the fastest. Even so, these little fluff balls are still completely dependent on their mother's protection. Amba had ventured deep into the forest. Suddenly, a faint chewing sound echoed. She immediately lowered her body, her brown coat blending into the surroundings. Not far away, a few spotted deer were grazing. Amba held her breath and quietly crept closer to her prey. Even in the open, the spotted deer still failed to notice her. But just as Amba was about to spring, a dry twig snapped under her paw. The herd instantly became alerted and bolted away. The hunt failed. But Amba does not give up. She followed the deer tracks deeper into the forest. Without realizing, she had moved farther and farther away from the den. Back at the den, the cubs lay sprawled under the warm sunlight and gradually fell asleep. But at that very moment, danger was silently approaching. It was a massive gray python, an Indian python up to 6 meters long, slowly slithering along a tree trunk. Over the years, countless tiger cubs have been swallowed whole in their sleep. Although its eyesight is poor, its heat-sensing organs allow it to pinpoint the cub's body heat precisely. At that critical moment, a troop of monkeys in the trees suddenly erupted in chaos. They frantically shook the branches and let out piercing screams. The noise woke Ravi. He did not back down, but instead stepped toward the python and stepped forward, one careful pace at a time, toward the python. Though the sound was still young and unpolished, it carried a fierce, unyielding defiance. The cry was immature, yet filled with determination. It reached Amba's ears in time. Her heart tightened, her heart clenched tight. She knew her cubs had to be in danger. A tiny body stood in front of its siblings, trying to buy every precious second until their mother returned. A thunderous tiger roar shook the entire forest, and Amba finally made it back to the river. She opened her mouth, baring her fangs, and charged straight at the python. The Indian python was clearly startled by the sudden appearance and finally turned away in retreat. Amba rushed immediately to her cubs, and only after confirming each one was safe did her suspended heart finally settle. After that life and death ordeal, Amba understood this temporary den was no longer safe. She led her cubs to a cave surrounded by dense vegetation. The secluded environment meant that even when she went out to hunt, her cubs would still have a secure shelter. Each cub had a very different personality, but Amba treated them all fairly, including Ravi, the adventurous troublemaker. Before long, a month had passed, and the cubs had grown noticeably, even able to follow their mother on short walks around the den. Ravi remained the boldest of the cubs, always walking ahead of his siblings. Not far from them, a black bear was leisurely leading its own cubs in search of food. Amba stopped immediately. She had to teach her cubs that staying away from black bears was a mandatory lesson in survival. Just then, a brilliantly colored peacock suddenly appeared, spreading its dazzling blue feathers under the sun. The cubs had never seen such a creature before, and were so startled that they ran straight back to the den. While Amba savored this rare moment with her cubs, a major shift was quietly unfolding in the forest. A male tiger named Xiangka had pulled off the open challenge against the previous Tiger King and made the territory his own. This was an extremely dangerous signal for the cubs. If Xiangka discovered them, he would show no mercy. After Xiangka took over the territory, he patrolled it every day. The heat left him exhausted, so he lay down in the shallow water of a pond to cool himself. But this unintentionally created an opportunity for some smaller animals. As flies landed one by one on Xiangka's body, the frogs in the pond began to stir. In just a moment, Xiangka was covered in frogs, and a lavish feast quietly began. But the feast didn't last long. When Xiangka stood up, the frogs hurriedly leapt back into the pond. That day, it was time for Amba to hunt again. But the vegetation on this grassland was sparse, not ideal for concealment, making this hunt extremely difficult. A spotted deer stood in the distance, watching Amba with caution, always keeping a safe distance. They understood very well that tigers are ambush predators. The better they hide, the more dangerous they are. Amba wandered the grassland for quite some time before finally spotting a careless spotted deer. It was still grazing with its head down, completely unaware of the danger in the distance. Amba no longer hesitated. Her hind legs suddenly gathered strength, and she shot forward like an arrow released from a bow. In an instant, the grassland fell into chaos. The other deer scattered and fled, but Amba was a burst hunter, not built for long chases, and soon she stopped. Just as she thought the hunt had failed again, a faint rustling came from the nearby grass. A confident spotted deer believed hiding in the grass would keep it unseen, but it was taken down by Amba in an instant. Amba dragged the prey closer to the den. She had to eat nearly 30 kilograms of meat in one meal to ensure enough milk for her cubs. After she had eaten her fill, the cubs immediately gathered around. As for Ravi, he treated the deer's antlers like his personal teething toy. But sometimes, overeating comes with a few side effects. As the cubs grew bigger by the day, they became increasingly energetic, leaving Amba without a single moment of rest. Just as they were playing, Xiangka was slowly approaching their den. Perhaps it was the scent of prey or the cries of the cubs that led him here. Amba was the first to sense something was wrong. She glanced back at her still fragile cubs. She absolutely could not let Xiangka get close.
Meanwhile, as Xiangka advanced, he continuously marked his territory. Seeing that her cubs had all retreated into the den, Amba suddenly came up with an idea. She deliberately made some noise and moved toward the deer carcass. Sure enough, the plan worked. Xiangka's attention was immediately drawn to the deer. Amba watched as Xiangka dragged the prey away and finally let out a breath of relief. Even though she had lost the food, at least her cubs were safe for now.